来我们将继续进入我们的多人对谈环节。那在这个环节当中，我们所探讨的主题是沉浸技术的近景与远景。Okay, now let's continue the panel discussion, the now and future of immersive technology. 那首先呢，让我们有请主持人 Greenlight Insights 产业分析师岳礼。Let's welcome the moderator first, Natalie Yue, Industry Analyst at Greenlight Insights. Welcome. 同时，我们有请 Intel 工作室首席创意官及总经理 Diego Pruluski. And let's welcome Diego Pruluski, the Chief Creative and General Manager of Intel Studios. 同时呢，还有 Ted Schilowitz, the futurist at Paramount Pictures, 以及小米 VR 产品的负责人马杰斯。有请各位。
大家下午好。我先提醒一下大家，就是这个 panel 会是以英文的形式，如果有需要的话，大家可以去租借一下那个同声传译的那个设备。Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm from Greenlight Insight. Our company is a research company that focuses on VR and AR industries only. And my job is, I focus on data in the industry. My daily job is just collecting data and doing some market forecast. So let's start with you guys some brief introductions. You want to go first, Diego?
Sure. Hi, my name is Diego Pruluski. I'm leading Intel Studios. Intel Studios is a large immersive media volumetric capture stage based in Los Angeles. Our focus is really to try to bring the immersive media.
A futurist at Paramount Pictures, so I work for a major US movie studio that's around for over 100 years, so startup. Smart startup. My job at the studio is somewhat unique. I get to explore all types of future technology and approaches to entertainment and storytelling, as well as socialization and new use cases for entertainment and all the different ways that we approach it. For some of you that were in the talk this morning that I was doing in the morning with Eddie, we talked a lot about mixed reality devices, virtual reality devices, starting to come into the mainstream and starting to really show a blossoming effect now within audiences that are adopting them beyond the early adopter enthusiasts like us here on stage, and probably many of you, reaching out into much wider audiences of regular people that don't work in our industry that are now purchasing the devices and enjoying these devices for many things. So we're spending a lot of time studying that, and we see a very bright future for this industry.
Good. So my name is Jason. I'm the director of VR and AR in Xiaomi. And you probably everyone knows that Xiaomi does smartphones and TVs and IoT devices. And it happens also does VR and AR as well. We launched 5 VR headsets previously, and one of which you probably know is a cooperation with Oculus to develop and launch Oculus Go, and which is also called MiVR standalone in China. Yeah, that's what I have been doing for the last 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, so our topic today is the now and future of immersive tech. And Ted, I attend your keynote this morning. You've talked a lot about like mixed reality experiences. So how do you see the current status of the technology innovation in XR space?
So mixed reality is still an emerging technology form. There's a use case, obviously, that has some degree of popularity, which I refer to as magic window AR, which is using your phone as a little sort of window through the camera to then create experiences. And many people know about the success, the worldwide success of things like Pokemon Go, which generated massive creative success as well as massive economic success, but all trapped inside this little tiny screen. that people are holding. Where I see the future of the medium going, which is what I was referring to this morning, is when you start to put some deep understanding on where the visual and auditory system is, it's not in our hands, it's on our face. So this is where the visual system is, this is where the audio system is. We've quite figured out the audio system, a lot of you are using it right now for translation, and we don't hold little personal speakers to do that in something like this, we wear them on our ears. When the technology gets smart enough, right enough, effective enough to move away from the holdable screen era, we are going to likely be in the wearable screen era. And it's going to take some time, just like the migration from what a cell phone used to be to what a cell phone is now, which is not a cell phone at all. It's a portable pocket visual computing system. That's what it really is.
There's no keys on the phone.
There's a phone app.
Yeah.
There's a virtual phone. We see that there is going to be a day when it will likely be very mass, normal, human adopted behavior to wear things on our face to give us a giant screen that we can part and parcel any way we want to do virtual reality experiences, mixed reality experiences of all flavors and forms, whether they're entertainment, social, healthcare, industrial. It's already happening quite significantly in the industrial. There are massive already significant industries all over the world that are using mixed reality glasses, mixed reality eyewear, because the technical staff needs their hands free to be able to do things with their hands. They don't want to hold their device. So they allow their head to hold their device, and they're able to accomplish this. So we're basically tracking along the value of that into the broader consumer world.
Diego, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I'm a big believer, and I talked about pushing the industry and everyone in the room being really with the motivation and the alongside seeing on how the technology will develop. I'm very much relying on your projections, as we talked a lot in terms of how the devices will develop and how the technology will enable consumers to be and have more accessibility to the content. And this is where when I think about immersive tech, for me it's more the content side, the content creation side of that equation that needs to be addressed as well. And when we look at the processes and methodologies for content creation, they're very much driven by the traditional animation and filmmaking, and there's a friction on bringing those methodologies into the immersive space, and knowing that the flat screen, it's not more about 2K or 4K or 8K, it's about 6DoF, it's about user experience, it's about gestures, it's about the sensory and deeper connections to the sensories. And that changed totally the relationship on how we're seeing creators engaging in the storytelling. And we're focusing very much on how do we solve or how do we bring the technology gaps into the new tech, and thinking about these new devices that will come up. Our roadmap is really focused on the 5 and 10 years coming up, and looking into how do we merge those together. We worked with TED for about a year and a half for this project that is presenting now here in Greece at the conference room. And we didn't work a year and a half because it's a traditional theme that works we were sitting a year and a half trying to figure out what will be the best way to produce it, how are we going to shoot it, who do we bring to the stage, how are we going to process, where is going to be experience. And it was not a process, a clean, again, creative process of a year and a half of developing the IP. It was really just figuring out this new field altogether.
I think because you're involved in the insights and the studying of the economics and the market growth of this, if you look at some of the misconceptions of the mixed reality economics today, the dollars that are going into these companies, and people are making assumptions that these are vast sums of money, like Magic Leap, the company I was referring to in Florida that I'm quite a big fan of what they're doing, they've raised now close to $3 billion US. And people are like, that's a huge amount of money. But it's actually not even close, in terms of what the dollars that will need to be plugged into this medium to accomplish these goals will need to be probably 30 or 40x what has been invested today, let's make an assumption that the entire mixed reality, and touching this from the hardware standpoint, the entire mixed reality and virtual reality investment pool is maybe, for hardware, is maybe $10 billion. You look at the level of investment for traditional flat screens, a screen like this, a screen like this, the screens that every one of your phones using, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide in R&D and development for many thousands of companies across the globe to achieve what we have today in terms of very stable, advanced logical systems to do this. The mixed reality and virtual reality dollar bucket is just a tiny fraction of that. And what we've accomplished with a tiny fraction is quite miraculous. But if you think about what it actually needs to be a successful device that you will use every day in replacement of your smartphone, you're going to need hundreds of billions of dollars of worldwide investment to achieve that.
That's true, that's true. So speaking of hardware, I think Jason has some comments on this topic as well.
So I think right now we are at the state of infrastructure building, actually. So people in the industry are always talking about the chicken and egg problems. You know, the content creators and developers, they talk about, you know, the hardware is not that good yet, and the hardware guys are talking about, you know, the content is not that good yet. So who's the chicken and who comes the first? I always think that it's always that the chicken comes first. The magic chicken that can lay as many eggs as possible, as you would like, and which is the infrastructure. That means, you know, like the computer visions, the computer graphics, and many other things that can, you know, enable the content creators to make the contents that can really amaze the consumers. Right now, when content creators are creating contents, there are still a lot of limitations that they want to create. For example, let me just give one example. So everyone is saying that Oculus Quest is great, right? It's probably the best that has happened to the consumer VR. But the inside tracking inside the Oculus Quest is really, really difficult to do. And if you look at the whole industry, there's only Oculus that can do it right. You know, just a single module with 4 cameras that can track both your head and both your hands at the same time, and with such low power consumption that can run on a Snapdragon 835. If you try to find it in other, you know, tech providers and things like that, you cannot find such solutions right now. That means if you are content creators, if you want to create that kind of content, then you can only, you know, do it with in the Oculus platform, which is quite a limiting factor. You know, if like phone, everyone can does it, then it's a much wider audience that you can be reaching to.
So basically, you're saying like expanding opening the platform, opening the developers platform will increase our consumer market, right?
Which means that when the infrastructure is more ready, then the content creators, developers can have a much easier time to build amazing content that can be truly appealing to the normal consumers.
Okay, so
right now, I think we are not quite there yet. We are still building the infrastructure. Yes, there are content, but they are limited in some way.
As a content,
Yeah.
working with some content company.
Yeah, I think we are definitely in the chicken and egg, and we are now putting a lot of eggs without really a good chicken. But sorry, I just keep the bell. But the idea is really how do we can create content, looking beyond the existing today infrastructure. How can we create content and storytelling, thinking about where the technology will go? I think if we wait for the infrastructure, we're going to lose the opportunity to bring, I think, the global awareness and motivation to keep these investments. We're talking about how much it's being invested. I don't know how much is here in China, the VC and investment, but I can tell you in the US, in the last years we had a huge degradation and decline in terms of immersive media and interactive technology. And the way we have to start thinking and the importance of the creators in the room as well as the technologies is don't wait for the chicken or the egg. Focus on your egg or your chicken and the importance really to bring that together and thinking on the long term of how these experiences will live. As if I bring an example again, the project we did together, we were really wanted to bring this into an AR, immersive headset, and we're talking about VR as well. We need to go forward. And when we look at the content and we look at the hardware existing, the hardware was not there yet. But we didn't want to stop. We didn't want to say, okay, so we cannot create anything that will not happen. So we choose a device, which is a phone, a screen that it's much more stable today, I would say, or much achievable, to use that for people to experience the content, knowing that that content, which exists in 6 degrees of freedom, can be and will exist in the future on any kind of hardware infrastructure that will come. And this can go all the way even to holographic projections, and it can go to any kind of futuristic technology that will be evolved. And there's a responsibility for the content creators to keep opening and keep pushing those stories into the different mediums, because that also drives the technology and infrastructure and the future on where we have to put the investments to make this happen.
In China, is there a term, in the West we have a term called first mover advantage. Does that exist? Is there like a Chinese sort of equivalent of that terminology? Maybe?
Maybe.
So at least in our world, we refer to something called first mover advantage, meaning those that take the risks first can reap the rewards when those rewards come, but they're taking a risk because those rewards may not come. But if you take the risk and the reward pool is there, you can capitalize from it. Others can always follow. But the leaders, the ones that try first, will often be the ones that will set the stage to continue to win time after time after time. So what we're seeing now, to your point about the Oculus Quest and the Oculus ecosystem, we're in an age in the VR world today, where we're the age of what we call the walled gardens, where because of the complexity of the systems and the fact that each system has its own proprietary code base, and proprietary optics, and proprietary use case for the hands and the tracking and the cameras, that those companies have had to make both a business and technical decision to each have their own store, to each have their own storefront where you can purchase the pieces of software to play. The companies that have decided to take the bet on building cross-platform, there's more money involved because you have to try to get it into everything, to get it into PlayStation VR, which has a fairly significant installed user base now at close to 5 million devices off the 100 million PlayStations that are out there. Oculus is now doing really well with Oculus Go and Oculus Quest. And then HTC did really well with the Vive. They've got the next one coming. Valve is releasing their own headset. But they all have their own little stores. So the software companies that build this have to make a different version for every store. And then try and see which of those devices are going to be the hit devices. Today, a lot of developers are taking the bet on Oculus Quest because we're seeing sales really strong with the device. And those first, I would say, 15 companies that took the bet before the device even really existed on building for that device are now reaping the rewards of that. Those first 15 or so things you can purchase on the Oculus Quest are all doing really well on the platform. These companies are now making money. They're not losing money, wondering for the day that they're going to make money. They're actually making money. And probably the top 5 are making significant amounts of money in a market that's still extraordinarily tiny compared to the traditional interactive video game and screen market. It's very, very small comparatively. But those that have tried first and took the risk are seeing good rewards from that, both creatively and economically.
So do you think Oculus Quest is like super ready for consumers?
I do. I think it's a complete game changer. I mean, I'm a guy who is working on these systems and using these systems on a daily basis. the miracle of not having a tethered PC, not having to run a Windows operating system to start up the system, to log into the Oculus application and wait for it to boot up, and then, oh wait, no, there's some Windows updates, hold on, I gotta do the Windows updates. Just all those little things are what we call friction points. And 3 or 4 friction points for a consumer means they're not gonna use it every day. If they're really excited about it, they may use it once in a while, but they're definitely not gonna use it every day. Whereas what we're now seeing with, initially with Oculus Go, and now even more robustly with Oculus Quest, is the idea of almost an instant boot up, no associated computer or like additional operating system, it's all just a unique built operating system for the device. You put the thing on, you push the button, and just the ability to quickly draw what we call the Guardian system, the play area, that used to be very clunky and problematic for a number of years in VR, has now been figured out. Like, you draw it, and you're ready to go. And it'll tell you it's big enough, or it's not quite big enough, but you can still do it if you choose to click this, and it'll give you a smaller sort of surroundings. Those little moments of use case make the device popular. So when people buy one and then they want to show it to their friends, it's not like this whole big rigmarole to get it working. It's like, put it on, let me put you in Beat Saber, let me put you in Creed, let me put you in Vader Immortal, let me put you in the 5 or 6 other things that are on the Quest, and people are doing it. And once they see it, then they tell their friends about it, and their friends go out and buy one, and before you know it, you have a phenomenon. So we're at the cusp of that right now. The biggest things are, it's a completely self-contained device that actually works pretty well. It's not perfect by any means, but it works pretty well. And we're starting to use it. Our daily behavior habits are starting to happen. Like when I was mentioning this morning, 5 or 6 of us brought them with us on the plane. We can't, I guess, buy them in China yet, but it's like Eddie was saying, China finds a way. I'm sure you will have it soon. So we're using them, and I think tomorrow morning we're going to gather in the lobby and do a little Quest play, and we're going to go on the beach and do a little
Play
Quest
the
play.
tennis in the lobby.
Yeah, in the lobby.
So Jason, do you have any ideas on like China market on this side? Like, are all the headsets ready for consumers in China market?
I think one of the things that is quite different between China and the US especially is that the presence and the absence of Oculus. So in the US or in the rest of the world, you might feel the tempo and the trend of VR to be approaching that of the consumer market, especially with the launch of Oculus Quest. But because of the absence of the biggest player in the VR space, Oculus, in China, so the whole pace of that in China, it's actually slower than the US in the consumer space.
Even though all the hardware is actually built in China, which is the ironic part about it. Right?
Yes. So on consumer market, China is definitely going to be much slower, that's for sure. But on the enterprises market, China is quite leading the way, I think, for that area. Yeah. So it will really fall into how well the Chinese companies can catch up with Oculus on the tech side. For example, like what I just said about the inside positional tracking on the Oculus Quest. Whether someone can find a way to does it as good as Oculus Quest will give them huge opportunities in China because of the absence of Oculus here. So, yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I would just add that I think that eventually the good sign of Oculus Quest that it's coming, it's beyond Oculus as a brand. It's really a breakthrough point where we're seeing much more adoption, as you're saying. And this is a very positive peak in terms of the VR, AR, MR interactive industry, where I think we were talking before about the phone and how the phone evolved to be much more than a phone. And I think we are yet on a point where the VR headset evolved to be much more than a VR headset. And the Oculus Quest is the first touch where we're seeing this device that was supposed to connect us, bringing much more social experiences, getting together to a reunion and talking and doing things that we never thought maybe we would do with a VR headset. And where we see the market going and where we see the evolution of the hardware and the technology, I think it's important not to get into a specific existing solution, but try to touch point on many different ways on how to interact with the content and what kind of hardware to use for the content. Yeah.
What's interesting when you've mentioned hardware, like there are these moments of discovery that happen for me all the time when I travel out east, is just yesterday and today, there's this small little VR, like 3DOF VR headset from a company called Skyworth, and it's, the optics are, what's it in Chinese? It's Chongwei. The optics are remarkable. Like, I put the thing on, and it's almost better than any of the high-end systems that I've seen. It's sort of like a low-cost mobile headset, but whatever screens they're using and the optics they're using, it's incredible. So like, I can't wait to just have one of those in my collection, in my arsenal, just to know that even though it hasn't gotten any market traction, probably even in China, it's fairly small sales, right? But whatever they did from an engineering standpoint is really good. With the one, of course, East-West challenge of the nose bridge for it is definitely designed for Asian, not for people like me. So I had to actually hold it because the nose bridge is completely wrong for my nose.
It's like me wearing Oculus.
Yeah, same, right? You have the same issue on the other side.
Yeah.
So these are, of course, these cross-cultural problems that haven't been solved yet because the market's not probably big enough to solve them. When you build it for the US market, even though they're being built here, you're making the nose design, face design for a Western face, whereas the Asian headsets are really built for Asian face, which is interesting.
Yeah. And the Chinese are always complaining about the light leaking on the Oculus
because their
headset.
faces are different, yeah. Which makes sense.
So I work on the market forecast. What do you see the future of this immersive technology? Who wants to go first?
You mean some trends on the hardware or in general?
Yeah, in general.
Okay. I think for the headset to become mainstream devices, it's going to take longer than most people would expect. Either for VR or AR. Yeah. Even so, the launch of Oculus Quest, it's an exciting moment, but the adoption of consumer electronic devices is usually taking a very, very long time. Even the hardcore, like guys like you and us, people think it's ready, think, oh, the experience is so good, but for a mere mortal, on the street, that they accept this form factor as their everyday life usage or entertainment, is kind of going to take a long time for they can sink in these kind of ideas, to make into their home. So I think it's going to be longer than most people would expect. However, if you are in the industry and you want to stick to the industry, you have no choice. But but continue doing it. The way of doing that, I think, is that if you want to develop content on it, then you need to develop games on the 6DOF devices. It's the true definition of a VR headset. And game and the interaction, especially the interaction, that gives you the power to really make it amazing. Because when talking about games, people are usually talking about the high fidelity graphics and the things like that. That's actually not that important compared to a great interaction. For example, like Beat Saber. Beat Saber is so successful. It's only because the way that it's played is really amazing. It's because how you interact, the lightsaber interact with the cubes, or it just feels amazing to you. And like the tutorial in the Oculus Quest where you can hold these little squares and balls and you can punch in things like that, it's also really amazing. So I think the magic of VR is really lies on this kind of interaction. So I think making game and also in a business sense that there have been many VR games have been proving to be quite successful commercially. Like Beat Saber, they make like $30 million, just 3 people. And like Raw Data and many previous titles that have making millions of dollars so by a very small team and relatively small investment compared to like a smartphone or AAA or console, those type of investment. So I think you can be quite successful commercially in the VR AR space already by making this type of endeavors in that space. Yeah.
Diego and Ted, do you have any next level comments on the immersive tech?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying in terms of the time horizon always takes longer for true consumer mass adoption than the industry thinks, than the pundits think. We're really looking at sort of 7 to 15 year ramp time till really like everybody has one of these and everybody has had a few of them of various iterations. Like I'm 6 iterations in, we're probably 25 because you're the hardware side. I own pretty much every piece of hardware that's ever been created in the immersive space in our labs, right? From the earliest DK1s to DK2s and the earliest 5 prototypes all the way through to today, right?
I joined the industry for like over 1 year. I have 3 headsets at my home.
Yeah, so I've got 30 headsets at my home, right? And I've been in the VR world, VR AR world, for about 7 years now. But what we look at when you talk about numbers, I'm curious if this sort of resonates with you with your analyzing and study of the numbers. We look at what we call the 10x multiple effect. So in the first iterations of what we consider commercial success of these devices, the numbers were in the hundreds of thousands, meaning you had a few 100,000 of each device that was existing tethered to a computer age, right? And then the very short-lived put a smartphone into a container and put that onto your face. Everybody that was doing this with any sort of real study knew that that was not going to be the future of this business. It's too troublesome. You need your phone where your phone is. You don't want to put your phone to connect it to this device. So what most people were doing that were involved in it from a research standpoint, they would just buy second devices. You wouldn't use your own phone. It didn't make any sense. So we knew that the human equation for that was not going to be the future of this. Dedicated devices were going to be the future of this. So basically what all the manufacturers did was starting just to rip the guts of the phone out and just use the displays, and therefore Oculus Go came into existence at a cost of about $200 US. And those sold considerably well, right? Still in the probably low millions overall, but 10x from its predecessor, right? Now we sit in a day, 2019 into 2020, where we're studying and looking at something like Oculus Quest. Now keep in mind, I don't work for Oculus. I'm not a researcher of numbers like you are. I'm just with my gut prediction and looking at some of the reports that I get and so forth and so on. There's a fairly good prediction that the Oculus Quest alone is going to sell in the few million devices over this next calendar year. Let's call it maybe 1.5 million to 2 million devices. And that is significant enough to set the stage for the next device that will probably sell 8 to 10 million devices. Now you have an offshoot of that where you have Sony and PlayStation, right? Which arguably is a fairly primitive device compared to other devices. The hand controllers are leftovers from the video game system. They're not very good. The use case of how you move around in the 6DoF is very limited in the PlayStation. But because of the installed base of PlayStation being so strong, they are still the best-selling 6DoF headset. That's just about to change. So if you put predictive analysis, and this is not me knowing anything that's coming from Sony or not what they're doing, you know that Sony has to be watching the market at large, seeing what's happening with the success of standalone devices, of Oculus Quest and probably 4 or 5 others that are coming from different manufacturers that will grab into those markets. And Sony is preparing for their next goal set, which is likely tied very tightly to the PlayStation infrastructure, but not tied directly to a PlayStation. Likely a standalone device that will be part of that PlayStation universe. And that will probably sell in the 10 to 20 million range. By the 2022, 2023 timeframe, you'll likely have a fairly robust market overall in just the VR space of probably 15 to 25 million devices sold globally. Still very tiny compared to smartphones, obviously, but significant enough that you'll have many companies making money on the content and software side.
And to build the foundation of the industry.
Correct. And then it's starting to happen. At the same time, the augmented mixed reality world will start chasing down its goal sets and start really reaching into the idea of how do we replace the smartphone. Because the company that figures out how to replace the smartphone, that's not a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, that's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And that's what's going to happen at some point. So the big play, the really big hook, like I was saying this morning, VR is the very interesting, lovely, multi-billion-dollar sideshow, but the main attraction is mixed reality in the form factor when it gets right enough that you are now not using your phone all the time. You'll have a moment, probably I would say it'll happen to a lot of people around 2025. You'll have a moment where you'll forget your smartphone at home. If you forget your smartphone at home today, you turn around and get your smartphone. Like, you don't continue your day without it, right? But there will be a day, 4 or 5 years from now, where you'll forget your smartphone, realize you have something that has all the functionality of your smartphone, and you didn't even have to put it in your pocket. You happen to be wearing it. And then that day will happen, and you'll do your email, your texting, your WeChat, your video viewing with this device as opposed to this device, and we're off to the races. That's multi-trillion-dollar industry change.
Diego.
Yeah, I think following the numbers, and we talk about technology and the future of technology and where is it going, we know that the evolvement has always been exponential. It has never been linear. And following all the projection of the 2 million, going to 8 million, going to 32 million, and I think we follow the processors and the GPUs and CPUs, how they exponentially grow the capabilities and computation capabilities. I think when we look at the market of adoption, is beyond the exponential potential. It will happen sooner. Yes, it will take 5 years, 7 years, but we're talking about 7 years that you will wake up and this will be the reality. So in a way, looking into 7 years in the past, the conversations were with most of the investors where nobody will never put something on their head. We're not investing on this. This will not happen. Go to someone else. I don't believe that someone will put something on their head. The conversation today is not about someone will put on the head, is how do you make it smaller? How do you make it, how are you going to make it and put it on the head? So that shift already happened. It's not any more about if, it's more about when. And the when, I think, is really much today. Today is when most of the people, and we're talking about the opportunity, today is when we are building these immersive technologies capabilities that will mature before you get see it happening. So we are, the future is now in that aspect, in terms of mindset and thinking and building and creation.
I agree. Just make some comments.
Yeah. So I've been thinking, firstly, I think I totally agree with you guys. And I've been thinking from a different perspective recently. Is that in the industry, people are always talking about, what do you see VR and AR in 5 years? And what do you see, the experience the devices will be like at that time? I usually will change the topic to, what I think the things will not change from right now to 5 years, even 10 years. And I think about it, I think about 5 things. So the first thing is that people will still like a smaller, lighter headset. And that mostly lies in the display and optical technologies. And the second one is that people would still like the devices to be the display to be much more high definition. Don't have this window effect, etc. And the larger FOV and these things. So that also lies in the display and optical technology. And the third one is that people would definitely want faster performance. But that's traditional chipset companies. They still own the place, so that's nothing to change about it. And the fourth one is that people would like to have smarter devices. For example, like inside-out tracking, hand gesture tracking, for AR, even facial trackings and environmental understanding, things like that. So this space is currently dominated by the AI companies. In China, like SenseTime, Baidu, Face++, etc. In the US, Google, and a few of the others. So in the fourth space, I think the current AI companies will still have a big say when the VR and AR become mainstream, because their capability of AI can be useful today, but also can be very even more useful in a VR AR era. So that's the fourth. And the fifth I think of is that people will still want more photorealistic graphics, and that's computer graphics, 3D. So that's why I'm thinking companies like Unity and Unreal will be of great value. Right now they're already very big because of the gaming industry. But when the VR and AR comes, not only games, but all the apps and experience, even videos, are going to be made by Unity and Unreal. So these are the kind of the 5 areas I've been thinking about that is going to be not changed and lasting for the next 5 years, if not 10 years.
All those things that you're mentioning are not science fiction. They're real. Like all those pieces that you're talking about aren't coming someday. They're actively happening, and companies are building to that future today, putting those resources in. It's happening right now. Software companies, hardware companies. When we're talking about the Oculus Quest system, it's on an 835 Qualcomm chip, which is actually already 3 generations old, interestingly enough. So when people are like, well, to get like the real ultimate VR experience, I still have to be tethered to a computer with a very big graphics card, we're already seeing that the trade-off of the kind of experiences that people will modify those experiences to make them work on the current Qualcomm chip, those experiences have a very strong future because the processing power, this mobile processing power, hasn't even been close to tapped into for the VR AR side. The 855, 865 chips that Qualcomm are building are much more advanced than what's in the Quest already. So the next few devices you see over the next 3-4 years are going to probably set the stage for why would we ever need a secondary computer and a wired headset. I think just like the very obviousness of the mobile snap-in phone VR was the day of the dinosaurs on that, the day of the dinosaurs of tethered headsets to a PC or a laptop are upon us. The next Sandbox we have, you'll probably see almost no tethered compute-based systems or backpack PCs. You'll see the mobile all-in-one headset will become the order of the day. And that will be where all the energy and money is put in by companies like yours and others. I believe that pretty firmly.
Seems like we have a lot to talk about, but we're running out of time. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for giving us the discussion about the now and future of immersive tech. Thank you very much. 再次感谢我们台上的各位嘉宾给我们带来精彩的探讨，谢谢各位。